you can let people in. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As you know, if you've been on a WANcast before or a WAN virtual event, we normally keep letting people in until about 3 minutes after. That's a good time when we know the majority of people are going to show up. So hope everyone's having a great day. If you want to throw in the chat your name and where you're from, we would love to hear. If everyone can just mute as they're coming in, it'll save us some background noise. That'll leave my dogs time to act up in the next 3 minutes. So thanks for joining us. Feel free in the chat, your name, where you're from. If you have any questions that you're interested in exploring today, you can go ahead and throw them in. We're going to answer as many as we can. Or if you have any great news you want to share, we love that too. I can share some from Juan. Last week, we got our first private donor. So we're very excited about that. There's a lot of work that goes into getting that name out there. So we were really excited. All right, Andrea said there's some feedback. So if you guys could just mute as you're coming in, we would love it. We're going to get started about 3 minutes after. So in about a minute. Thank you all for joining us.
Ashley, when will you be able to tell us a little bit more about this donor, this mystery donor?
Pretty soon. We got a lot of big news for Juan coming out this year. So we're kind of following the lead of one organization that's much bigger than us and more well-known. But yeah, we will be able to share quite a bit of information pretty soon. There's a lot of no information in that answer. These people found us, so they're not even in affordable housing, but they like the work that we're doing. So it was really exciting for them to realize that. All right, so we're about 3 minutes after. I'm sure some more people are joining on, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to start by thanking a lot of you all know Women's Affordable Housing Network is predominantly female, and we will always be majority female led because that's the space we created. But one of our treasures is our ally committee. And Mark Shelburne, who is on here, but I think in a location he can't talk much, has led this committee for over 2 years. But he has also joined our national board. And so that's a lot of work to run a committee and be on the national board. And so he's been looking and talking to people about the best replacement for him to run the ally committee. And we're thrilled that Abe Kruger, who's on this call, has stepped up to the challenge. He's with SK Collaborative, and he's going to speak for a few minutes, but we're really excited. He doesn't even fully know what this might entail yet. I'm sure Mark's given him some clues. And just so you all know, the ally committee here, there is a pledge on our website that any male or male identifying person can sign on as a supporter of Women's Affordable Housing Network, kind of broadcasting that, hey, we understand the need for us all to work together, and we're all focused on affordable housing. So that's out there, and anyone can join the committee. So they help with a bunch of different things. One example is Abe bringing this amazing idea of hosting an ally panel, exhibiting, different examples of allyship in the real estate world. So with that, Abe, thank you so much in advance, and we're thrilled to have you, and thank you for this great idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So like I said, I'm Abe Kruger with SK Collaborative, the brand new chair of Juan's Ally Committee. I do want to first acknowledge actually Cindy Wasser, who was the real inspiration for this panel, but she gave a similar talk about effective allyship last year at the Energy Efficient Builders Association. And once I heard about that, I immediately knew that the Juan Ally Committee needed to do something similar. So thank you. And then just to kind of piggyback on what Ashley said, yes, Juan has an ally committee. And so I'm looking around at all these attendees, and I want to make sure everyone's going to the website, learning more about the pledge and ways that we can help support Juan and achieving their goals. And so finally, I have to say, everyone's in for a real treat because I've known all these speakers for years, some over a decade. The moderator, Laura Marlowe, is my colleague, and she's been in the AEC industry for over 15 years. She heads up all of our sales and marketing efforts and is a wealth of knowledge. So with that, you've heard enough from me. I'm going to pass it to Laura. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Abe. And thank you also to Andrea, who's helping in the background, making sure all of this goes smoothly, and Ashley for setting the tone for us. I'm super excited to be here and to introduce our rock star panelists to you. I'm going to start with Patricia Paratich. She is GLA's Director of Affordable Housing with over 10 years of experience in multifamily design and affordable housing. She takes projects out of early stage of conceptual design, funding process, and through project closeout. In the last decade, she has overseen well over 2,000 completed units in many jurisdictions. And she's got experience in HUD, LIHTC elderly, HFOP, and family developments. She strongly embodies GLA's views and cultivates strong relationships with dedication to each project's success. She graduated from Southern Poly with a Bachelor's of Science in Architecture and a minor in Business Administration. Our next panelist is Sharon Guest. She's the principal of Radiant Development Partners, a real estate development company whose focus is developing obtainable and equitable, diverse housing. Sharon has been in the field of affordable housing for more than 26 years. She's been directly involved in financing and development of more than 55 housing projects, totaling nearly $1 billion in total development cost. She's led the structuring and closing of complex developments that include LIHTC, tax-exempt bonds, TAD, various bonds and grants, local and state home, RAD, FHA, and conventional financing and various local and federal rent subsidies. Our next panelist that I'm happy to introduce is Dana Lopez Ritchie. She is the Sustainability Studio Director for Newcomb & Boyd. She's a licensed mechanical engineer with over 15 years of experience providing consulting services for sustainable and energy efficient buildings. She assists owners, clients, and engineers with the implementation and execution of strategies to achieve sustainable and healthy building design and operation. Dana is enthusiastic about ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table, and she had the distinct honor of being selected as one of Engineered Systems Magazine's Top 20 to Watch Women in HVAC in 2020. And last but certainly not least, we have Cindy Wasser, who was in large part an inspiration for this panel. She's the Senior Manager of Green Building Programs for Home Innovation Research Labs. Cindy leads technical oversight, quality assurance, advocacy, and product certification activities of the NGBS Green Certification Program. Over the last 12 years, she's been instrumental in growing the NGBS Green to the leading green certification option for residential construction. Previously, Cindy supported the implementation of the EPA's residential labeling programs, namely Energy Star, Indoor Air Plus, and WaterSense. In earlier roles, she provided technical assistance at the National Association of Counties. She holds an MBA in sustainability from Bard College and a BS in environmental policy from Rutgers University. So welcome so much to our panel. Before we get started, I'll just give you a little insight into how this will be structured. We want it to be pretty casual and interactive. We would love to hear from you, our audience. So please put your questions into chat. And when we get to about the last 15 minutes of this webcast, we'll get to as many of those as we can. But with that, I'm going to start and ask each one of our panelists to answer the following question. Can you share a specific moment in your career when a male ally made a significant impact on your professional growth or opened doors for you? And Cindy, I'd like to start with you, please.
Great. Thanks, Laura, for the introduction. Many years ago, I was a entry-level professional within a nonprofit that focused on counties, county elected officials and their supporting staff. And I was terribly bored. I was a shared resource across several project managers within our team. And while there were active projects and grants, I was just really underutilized. There was one week where I was told, there's no work, just read a book, and I just was kind of losing my mind. And another person on my team kind of recognized that I was kind of bored. I wasn't being used to my fullest. And he really kind of took me under his wing and kind of made me his shadow for almost 2 years. I followed him to all of his meetings with both kind of our members and our private sector partners. And I got really great exposure to the industry and introductions to some influential technical experts. And that really helped kind of set my compass, from when I was broadly focused on sustainability to being more narrowly kind of set on the path of focusing on the built environment. And then I was able to leverage those connections when I was ready to move on to a different role. So I think that was really kind of pivotal to my success and kind of grounded me and kind of got me connected to where I needed to go.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Sharon, can I ask you the same question, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I started my career in affordable housing a long time ago, and I was on the governmental side for a while, and I moved into the private sector and worked for Columbia Residential under Noel Khalil, and he hired me to run his property management company, which I really don't know why he did that. But I didn't like property management. It wasn't my stitch, and I really wanted to get into the weeds of development. And so he created an opportunity for me to be a project manager. And Noel was very smart. He was he was smarter than most people in his time because all of his women were all his project managers were women. I think he understood what we brought to the table in terms of being very detailed and organized, and so he gave me that shot. And what I loved about him giving me that shot was that he was not hands-on. He was very hands-off, which was scary because I didn't really know what I was doing. But he allowed me to make the mistakes, and he allowed me to recover from the mistakes. And he put me at the table. And when he did that, he really boosted my confidence in development and understanding development. He allowed me to lead. I was at the table with people who've been in the business far longer than I and have far more experience than I. But I think overall, I've worked with a lot of men, but him giving me that opportunity and allowing me to build upon my confidence and my assertiveness, because I think that's really important, really helped really create and bolster my career in the affordable housing space.
I think we're going to be coming back to that topic of confidence a couple more times. So thank you for that. Patricia, how about you? A male ally, a coworker who opened doors or made an impact on your career professionally?
Thank you, Laura. And I have to say that I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to be on this panel and talk to everybody and be a part of this amazing group. As far as my journey, I will say I have been really, really fortunate through in my early career to learn from two of the best allies that I could have asked for. And their names are Fred and Alan, Fred Geheber and Alan Lewis. They are the founders of our company, Geheber Lewis. And they have always supported my growth and given me space to become the professional that I am today. I will say, not only being female, but also being foreign and not in English, not being my first language, it was really important for me to kind of find my voice. And I will say that they have always given me space. And whether it was a seat at the table early on, going with them to the meetings with clients, giving me the opportunity to kind of be involved and be present, as well as encouraging me along the way, eventually letting me run meetings, being hands-on, but also kind of being hands-off and kind of letting me grow and evolve was really, I would say, instrumental in me growing as a professional and as a female in the business. We all know it's a male dominated business, male dominated industry. And it was really, I would reiterate, I was really fortunate with them as mentors.
Excellent. And Dana, can we get your 2 cents on that question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. For me, I'm thinking specifically about a time, it's about 5 years ago, and it was Brendan Gardis, who was my manager at Newcomb and Boyd, and now we're co-directors for the Sustainability Studio. But early on, I was bringing in a lot of work, and it wasn't getting recognized. I was still an associate, it was as if I was doing all these great things, but no one really noticed. They were just like, great job, pat on the back, thumbs up. And Brendan said, I want you to put together a spreadsheet of all of the clients you brought in, all of the work you brought in, how much money that was. And I'm going to set up a meeting with the partners so you can show them this. And I did. I followed his direction. He set up the meeting for me. I went in there, and it was like everyone was blown away as though they had never seen this information before. Because they hadn't, it was always top of mind for me, but I needed an ally to help make that transparent and make it visible to everyone. I needed an ally to invite me to sit at the table and set up that meeting. And after that happened, I got 3 promotions in 2 years, and I became our sustainability studio director because this was something that was great for the firm that nobody knew about. So having those folks to lift you up is really, really important.
And the other thing I love from your story, Deanna, is that you didn't have to toot your own horn on your own. Somebody actually told you to do it, then helped you do it. And I just think that's tough as when you're early in your career, and especially as a woman. I think we're conditioned sometimes to don't brag, put your head down, keep your nose to the grindstone. So I love that somebody pushed you to do that and be recognized appropriately.
Yeah, and I want to add too, what Sharon said about helping, build confidence and assertiveness. Having somebody do that for you, having somebody get you a seat at the table really does that. It's extremely powerful, and it's, as Patricia was saying, it allows you to grow and evolve and find your voice. And then your, leadership starts to trust you because you're visible and you're speaking.
Right. You have the opportunity to form those higher level relationships that you didn't have before. Great responses. Let's shift gears just a little. I'd love to hear from you. How have you handled situations where you did not get the support that you needed? So let's start again with Cindy.
Yeah, I was thinking about that question this morning, and unfortunately, I came to the conclusion, like, you got to pick your battles and protect your energy, and like, there are some conversations where I will just sort of resign and choose not to kind of pick that battle, but then there's much more influence that I can play in my individual team at work. So I think that would be my response. I know it's like, not the most optimistic, like we're going to change everybody's heart and mind. I think kind of start small, start where you can have the best influence, protect your energy, and then you're going to make change in the longer run.
I love that. I've never heard protect your energy before, but it makes so much sense. Sharon, what are your thoughts on situations where you were not getting the support that you need?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate, and for some reason, I have this very assertive personality. So, uh, I've always been a self advocate. I did not have fear about advocating for myself, and to Dana's point, documenting my achievements. I always kept a record of things that I did, because I always want to be prepared if somebody asked me what some of my achievements were. That I was able to just easily, rattle off some of my accomplishments. And really, whether I've got support or not, I've just stayed resilient about my message. I didn't let somebody's lack of support alter my mission or my topic or my purpose. And so I just kept going and going and being an advocate and documenting and staying resilient. I will tell you one quick example of this was I worked somewhere and I challenged my boss on salary discrepancy, where the women were paid less, the men were paid more, and the women were doing the work. And he didn't agree with me. He gave me every reason up under the sun why this was the way it was. 3 years later, he was my friend. You can have a friend and a boss and not necessarily all be on the same page. But 3 years later, we were at lunch and he told me he actually thought about what I had said 3 years ago, and he went back and he had to do a self-evaluation, and he realized he was paying men higher than he was paying the women. And it wasn't anything that in his mind intentional. It was just he came from a time in life where men were paid higher. It was no rationale behind the why it was happening. And he told me then that he went and modified the salaries to ensure that the people were adequately and equally paid. And so even if it didn't pay off for me in that moment, it paid off for somebody down the road. And I think that's what we always have to be mindful of. Our advocacy is for us, but it's also for people behind us in the future.
I just wanted to chime in and say, like, I love in both Dana's story and your story, like the thing that's moving the needle is like spreadsheets and numbers. And like, we often think about like good female leaders as being like nurturing and caring and like a good speaker, but like it really is in your roles and your experiences, like the numbers and like the business management activities that are going to get you recognition.
Yeah, I think that that's an excellent point. And one doesn't preclude the other, right? You can be empathetic and compassionate and, and exude those qualities that may be more typically female, but also facts and data and spreadsheets, and that matters. Patricia, do you have a story to share on that topic?
Well, I have kind of almost an advice kind of instead of in a share. I will say it took me a long time to get confidence, to become more confident, to understand what my abilities are, and not to be afraid to speak up. And I would say, in situations where you're not getting the support that you need, one thing to do is listen, observe, reflect, and come up with a plan of action. Because maybe in the moment you cannot react, right? Maybe it's your first time encountering some situation, but coming back, taking what happened, reflecting on it, I would say kind of like repackaging it, maybe taking a different perspective, on it, and different approach, would be the kind of my suggestion, my advice. And sometimes if you can, honestly, if you're in the moment, speak up. I know sometimes we get afraid, right? Well, I don't want to say anything that's going to offend anybody, or I don't want to say anything, that's going to come off as maybe not in right place or right time. But I think it's important that we do get our voice, heard.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Dana, do you have an example you could share with us?
Yeah, and I love what everybody said here, because, it was pick your battles, protect your energy, take a deep breath, right? Reflect, reframe, and don't let the lack of support stop you. I think those were all kind of the themes that we talked about here. The example in my mind that just came to me while we were talking was fighting for paid parental leave at my firm. I first brought it up 9 years ago, and the response that I received was quite dismissive. We're fine with what we have. Don't worry about it. And I was new, and I had no kids. So fast forward, I kept with it. I was like, not going to let this one person discourage me. The take a deep breath part and stay calm, I didn't really have that figured out quite yet 9 years ago, but I started searching for other allies. Who else can I talk to in the firm about this? I had lunch with every single partner. I had lunch with most of the directors, and just kind of brought it up to feel out where they were at. Once I figured out who my people were, then I started talking to them about, okay, this is what this other firm is doing. What, can we do this here? And kept going. So it was either last year or the year before, we got a paid parental leave policy. I'm done having kids. My kids are 4 and 5. So this isn't for me, but this is for all of the other women coming next. And one of the I was very emotional when I saw the email come through that we got it. And one of them, I sent an email saying, thank you. You know, it's been a long road. And he said, thanks for bringing this up a long time ago. You know, you're one of the reasons why this happened. And that was huge for me. And it was, you know, and that was the same one who was originally dismissive of what I had said. So just keep going, keep finding more people, and take a deep breath. I could have done that a little bit more in the beginning.
Well, and I love that you started on that campaign when you were not a mother. It wasn't to benefit you directly. And I think this goes back to Sharon's point about equal pay. It's not just for us, it's for all of the others that come up behind us who deserve, you know, that kind of benefit. And equal pay is not a benefit, it's a right. So that's awesome. Congratulations and kudos to Newcomb and Boyd. Here's a good one, and I may chime in on this as well. What advice would you give to your younger self to better prepare for future interactions? And Cindy, I'm gonna pick on you.
Yeah.
Communication is working out well.
Yeah, at the beginning, I think it was Sharon who kicked us off, kind of mentioning confidence. And when reflecting on these questions, I was thinking about like, I would I would talk up my younger self to build her confidence and reiterate that she has something to say of value as much as anyone else, even if there are other people in the room that are louder or more polished or just feel more comfortable in that setting. I think that is what's going to carry us kind of through our careers and kind of help us be more effective in most situations.
Thanks. And if you have suggestions for tools or podcasts or books because that confidence theme, I keep hearing that. And that is what I would tell my younger self is be more assertive, be more confident. But if you panelists have specific ideas, or frankly, if any of the audience has some specific ideas around concrete tools that we could all use to help build our confidence, please put those in the chat. And Dana, I know you mentioned one earlier. Can you go ahead and call that out?
Yeah, a book that was really a game changer for me was recommended to me by my coach, my career coach. Highly recommend getting a career coach if you haven't done that. That was just a huge game changer for me. But the book is called Playing Big by Tara Moore. In the book, she talks about finding your inner mentor. You know, this person inside who's a wiser version of you, a calmer version of you, a more confident version of you, but it's all you. It's just, you got to pull that out. So imagining this inner mentor providing guidance to you, what would this person do? Or even, you know, at one point I picked a person I know very well. Liz York, actually, Laura, you know her. For me, it was sort of like, what would Liz do in this situation? How would she respond if she were told, no, we're not going to have a paid parental leave policy, or no, we don't have to upgrade our lactation room? What would she say? And then I would just kind of start being that person. And anyway, that book is one of the reasons for that, one of the catalysts. The other thing that she talks about in that book are two types of fear, pachad and yirah. They're Hebrew words. And pachad is that fear, like a fear of a lion chasing you, the scary fear that'll scare you away from something. But yirah it's a fear of, you know, public speaking or speaking up in a meeting or all these things that we're afraid of, but it should be energizing, like move forward with that yirah. There's so many other things I could keep talking about, but that book was a game changer for me.
So we'll put that in the chat. And that fake it till you make it reminds me of a tool that I'd like to share with everyone as well. It's a TED Talk by Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. She's a professor of sociology at Yale and considered one of the world experts on body language. And that ties into confidence, fake it till you make it. And she talks about power poses. I'm sure everyone's heard about the Superwoman pose and how we are taught to be small and do this and disappear, and that taking up space and being confident in your the way that you're presenting yourself physically affects how you feel mentally. I love this TED Talk, and so does everyone else, because it's in the top 10 of the history of TED Talks, but I love it so much. I've probably sent it to nearly every female that I know. Oh, you're going for a job interview? Listen to this. It's not a podcast, it's a webcast, it's a video. Oh, you've got a difficult conversation coming up. Oh, you feel that you're not being respected. Listen to this, watch this. It will give you so much confidence. And I will throw that in the chat as well. Patricia, what advice would you give to your younger self to be better prepared?
I would say that one of the things that I wish I kind of knew earlier and someone had told me was not to take everything so personally. And I think that's something that, even to this day, I mean, every now and then I'll catch myself and I'm like, man, because sometimes people act and they're acting in a certain way that maybe it's not intentional, right? Like as Sharon shared, her boss was not paying her enough, but it wasn't on purpose, most likely, right? Like it was just how he's been doing it, right? And how kind of it's been historically or whatnot. So I would say not taking things personally would be one way in doing it. And then also not being afraid to speak up and just trying to find the right, even if it's not the right time, don't wait for the right time, just speak up, because if you wait, things will fester. It'll be harder, and it won't feel as good as if when you see something, you just say something in the moment. I think that would be something that I would say for my younger self.
Yeah, that's good advice. Don't let it build up to the point where you're, just obsessing about an issue. Sharon, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, it's a lot of advice I would give to my younger self in a lot of areas, but I think some of the core advice it's really meaningful when I speak on it. When I speak on panels, I always talk about know your value. That all feeds into confidence. It all feeds into knowing your craft. But if we don't know our own value, it's very hard to communicate your value to someone else. And so you've got to know your value and be very confident in what your value is, because that is your representation of who you are in your work. Of course, you got to know your craft. And I say that to say that a lot of times people want something quickly, particularly now in the generations we have, everything is moving so fast. And I just say, really know your craft. Don't try to take shortcuts. Don't, you can fake it till you make it, but you got to know your stuff. And you got to be very careful about, how you present your, I guess, your knowledge base. Just know it. I can't say that enough, because I come across many women who in this space, they know some things, but they want stuff a lot faster. And I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe with the younger, maybe with the younger women, but just know it, because you're going to be judged on what you know. I mean, the measurement by which we're judged is very different by the measurement by which a man may be judged in the workplace. So I really want you to know your stuff. And then I want you to demand your value, because once you know your craft, once you know your value, demand that your value is recognized. And if it's not recognized, don't be afraid to move on. I mean, that's my biggest advice, because if I had stayed in that same position where I started, I may have risen in my career, but I may not have. It wasn't until I moved to different companies that I started to rise. And so don't be afraid. Don't get content. Don't get comfortable. You've always got to be hustling to take your career to the next level. I mean, it's just real, and come up with a plan. I think my career happened to me. I didn't go out and plan for this career. It just kind of fell in my lap, and I just started doing some things, and I looked up and I decided to start my own company, which is interesting. But plan out what you want. Have short-term goals. I've heard a lot of people give advice, do 90-day goals, because 90-day goals are a lot more digestible, and work your way to yearly goals, 3-year goals, but have a direction and have a plan so that you can have more direction over your career than allowing other people to have a direction over your career.
I like that. Be more active, less passive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to just remind our participants, if you have questions, whether they're for the entire group or specific to one of these ladies, put them in the chat and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can in the last 15 minutes. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. We've heard some fantastic stories from these ladies about early career, who mentored, how, but I want to really focus on the topic, male allyship. How do we recruit male colleagues? What do we do when we're not getting the alliance that we're looking for? And how can we help our male allies to be better and to be more active in supporting their female colleagues? So I'm going to start off again with Cindy. What is your best strategy for getting male colleagues to advocate you having a seat at the table?
Yeah, I was thinking about these types of scenarios, but also like scenarios where we might experience somebody not being an ally. And in reflecting on that, I would say nothing's going to change if you don't call out those small moments. And I would say, better to kind of call it out in that time, in that moment, and connect it to, you want to elevate it beyond that offender's like bad actions, their individual actions or choices, like connected to the company's values or their culture. Say, hey, you're not acting in the way of our company culture. That's not the way that we do things here. Or speak to it in terms of their longer professional development. Say to somebody, hey, it'd be a disservice if we allow young male colleagues, this is acceptable in the workplace. We're not setting them up for success if we allow this type of action to consider, to be allowed, And then in terms of like good strategies, how to get people to become allies and support us, I would say each person is an individual, and you might need to prove your worth first, like Sharon kind of laying out her dollar value, what she needed at the table, or like what money she was bringing into the company. That might be your currency that kind of wins you over with that person. And then once they're on your side, they can help advocate for you, lift you up, and kind of advocate for your ideas throughout the company.
Yeah, those are good. Those are great pieces of advice. Patricia, what's the best strategy you've employed for getting male colleagues to support or help you get a seat at the table?
Yeah, I would say that somehow letting them know that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to admit that you've done something wrong, or you haven't been supportive, or you haven't acted in the true spirit of allyship. And if someone's already an ally, or they're on the path, of becoming or being an ally, I would say lead by example. Also, that's really important to teach your fellow allies of how things should be done. And at the end of the day, when you're in a moment where things might seem awkward, or or you're not really sure whether you're on the end of receiving maybe it's not allyship, or maybe it is allyship, I would say at the end of the day, what's always helpful is, and it might sound trivial, but it's humor, right? Because I think humor, also just adding a little bit of humor to the situation to kind of disarm people, I think that's also helpful. Especially when you're in a moment where you're trying to lighten things up, but not make them lose their value, but just kind of make a spin, own the situation, and make a spin on it. And so I think that would be
That's
my
a great point. Humor just kind of helps deflect the it's back to the point of don't take everything so seriously. Know which battles to fight and which ones just to leave alone. I think humor is a great tool for discussing a serious topic, but not not always in a serious way. Right. Sharon, strategy for getting male colleagues to help you get a seat at the table.
Yeah, I think, one thing I would do is seek clarity from them, because I think sometimes when you create that dialogue where you're asking them, why this isn't happening or why I'm not being considered, when you have that dialogue and they have to explain it, sometimes that gives them actually clarity on why they have not been the ally that you've been seeking. And so when people have to explain themselves, it sometimes gets uncomfortable, but I think it also sheds some awareness to their thoughts and their beliefs and their actions. So I think, you should always um, try to see if you can have some kind of conversation around clarity in a lack of allyship. I think, again, it always goes back to advocacy. I think if you can share how your goals align with the company goals, how your achievements align with the company's achievements, I think you're now talking, you all can now talk, you're talking apples to apples. And then I think in terms of, how what advice you would give to men to be better allies, I think Patricia kind of hit on it on the nail. She said humor, but I think it's really making a personal connection, because often I've been in scenarios where my boss, when I start off, I may not know him very well. We may crack a joke. He may come sit in my office. We start talking. He realizes I'm actually a human being. He's actually a human being, right? We both have feelings. We both have children. We both have lives. And when you start making those connections, it just makes it easier for people to start understanding you, male or female, start understanding that, we all want the best for ourselves and our families and our lives. And so I think the key is making that personal connection. I would also advise not to make this a beauty contest or popularity contest, but create a real genuine connection. And I think it goes a long way to just opening up dialogue and being able to be very candid about conversations.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of that in what Dana was telling us about meeting with all of the principals and directors in order to get this new policy approved. Dana, can you expand on that a little? How did you make that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was nodding the whole time Sharon was talking, because for me, that's number one. It's building those real, meaningful, deep connections with your colleagues. And it's funny, it's like, how do you make that happen? It's being friends with these people. Like, they're your coworkers. You're going to see them all the time. Become friends with them. Get to know, their background, what their family's like, what do they do on the weekends. Talk to them about it. Go to lunch. And just invite them to lunch. I mean, nobody's going to say no to lunch. I've literally had no one ever say no to lunch
Everybody
that I work
loves
with
lunch.
internally. Yeah, internally. um, and so yeah, that's my number one, is establish those relationships, because once you have that, you can have more vulnerable conversations. I heard somebody talking about vulnerability. You can start to understand, be curious about them. What are their goals? What are their roadblocks? What are they trying to achieve? And then help them. Like, show them what it looks like to advocate for somebody else, and they'll remember that and then do it for you. Invite them to a meeting, set them up with a lunch for a client, whatever it is. Because raising two kids, a 4-year and a 5-year-old, I can tell them anything I want, and they're just gonna be like, whatever, mom. But if I can show them, like, I'm actually gonna see it sink in a little bit better later on. And I mean, kids, adults, we're all the same. It really is helpful to have that example.
Yeah, and I think developing that personal relationship and friendship counts, especially
Yeah.
when you're not in the room, right?
Right.
When you're not in
Right.
the room and these decisions are being made at an executive level and decisions that could impact your promotion, your career, your future, your department,
Yeah.
having those personal connections and having someone genuinely like you and believe in you really matters when you're not in the room. And, and big
That's a great point, Laura. And it works both ways, right? I mean, acknowledge also when they do advocate for you, acknowledge them. Say, hey, I noticed you did this for me when I wasn't in the room. You said this to so and so. I really appreciate that. They're going to want to do it more. Everybody loves positive feedback. Um, it's just building a good, strong friendship, basically.
So, kind of carrying on that theme, can we talk for a minute about practical, tactical steps? Hopefully, we all have the privilege of working with guys who are progressive and open minded and want to help women get a seat at the table and have their voices heard. But what practical advice do you give to your male colleagues to help them be stronger allies? So, think of a conversation with Jim or John or Juan, like what would you actually say to them about how to be a better ally to all of us? So, Cindy, I'm starting with you.
Yeah, yeah. At the beginning of the show, Abe had mentioned that I gave a similar kind of panel talk at the Energy and Environmental Building Alliance in the fall. And that was a great discussion. And when we opened it up for Q&A, a lot of the audience members really wanted to talk about the big picture stuff of like, oh, can we change our working hours to better accommodate people who need to pick up kids from childcare? Or how can we reach out and hire people that have been out of the workforce for a long time? And like, those are big challenges, and like, they're really going to influence how people work at your organization. And I think that I like how, in our talk today, in our preparation, Laura, you were really focused on like, what are the small tactical, like day-to-day things? Because I think that's where we can really like focus and get people started. I would say to those people looking to be allies, like, look for opportunities just to like amplify or provide a platform. Like, see if there's somebody at a meeting who like looks like they have something to say or has said something good, and just say, hey, I just want to reiterate, like, this person had a really good point. Just kind of echo and support. And then I'd also say, like, look at the invisible labor that women are doing around your workplace. Like, we talk about kind of men and women at home, they have like the mental load. Like, even though men might help out, it's still often the woman who's like figuring out and like has this mental list of like all the things that need to be gotten at the grocery store, and like what are the meals, like planning, for the whole week. And like, that's a load that often men don't take on. And it's the same at the workplace. Like, there's so much that women volunteer for just by kind of nature of what is expected and like the roles that women typically fill, like things like party planning, making the coffee, unloading the dishwasher, greeting guests. Like, a male ally could kind of recognize like when those things are being done by a woman, and either kind of step in and take the kind of task off their hands, or set up processes in place so that like the load is shared across all colleagues at all different levels of all different types.
I mean, I've seen it for decades and it's gotten better, but the women order the bagels and they pass around the get well cards, and they plan the baby showers. And so I would love to hear from the rest of our group also about how do you try to equalize that? What do you say? What do you do? And help to provide some really practical steps. Patricia, I'd like to hear from you next. What advice would you give the male colleagues around you regarding how to be a better ally?
I would start by saying that we shouldn't be afraid to point out the situations to them. Like, if they're, if they're not, if we're in the middle of a situation and you're seeing something, I would say, don't be afraid to say something. And then to them, I would say, be more work on being self-aware. I mean, work on yourself. And again, it's easier to say and to do that once, unfortunately, like there's an example, something happened, right? Like, Sharon shared at one point in our earlier discussions, they were changing conference rooms, right? I'm not trying to
we're
steal
going to
your
hear this story. We're going to hear this story next.
Yeah, so
Everyone needs to hear this.
I'm not going to say it for Sharon, but when you're in that moment and you're seeing something, I would, point it out to them, because I think everybody, we as humans, we do want to do better. We do want to improve. We do want to do better next time. And I wouldn't take it that they're doing this on purpose, right? I don't think they are. So, making sure that they feel that they're, aware of what happened and that they're working on themselves, I think it's really important.
Well, you teed this up perfectly, because we had a prep call. Dana hasn't heard this yet, but we heard a great story from Sharon regarding kind of how you deal with these situations where women are doing the traditional woman work and the men leave the room. So Sharon, we got to hear this one again.
Okay, so yeah, so again, I'm a little bit more assertive and I'm a little bit more direct. And so we were in a meeting and we had to change conference rooms and we had food. And so instantly when they said, okay, we need to change conference rooms, all the men grabbed their, belongings and started heading out of the room. And some women started grabbing the food. And I looked at them and I said, put it down. And literally, what I'm saying is, we also have to change how we see our roles, because as much as we want everybody else to change, we got to start with us. And we have these gender roles that have been throughout society for generations and generations. And if we start changing how we see ourselves, then they are not going to have a choice but to change. So I'm with showing them they need to change. I mean, I think that's, very politely, but it's nothing wrong with grabbing your stuff and walking out of the room. And at some point, they're going to realize, because they're going to want something to eat, that they don't have any food, and they're going to have to go back and get that food, right? It was a really profound moment that I would have done the same thing, but because of where I was in my headspace in 2025, I just looked at these women. I said, "Put it down, and let's go." And they did. And that really was a moment for me that says, I've got to change how I see myself. And I think we have to do that, more so than just trying to get them to change as well.
But it was also, Sharon, a moment for those women. My guess
Absolutely.
is that you're a little further ahead in your career and probably more of a leadership role. So they went home and they told their partners and their husbands and their boyfriend, you wouldn't believe what happened in this meeting today, because it was a moment for them to hear that from you more. You're more in a mentor role or a leader role, and that's going to change the way they behave in the future.
I hope so. Now I will correct that. They were actually probably at a higher level than I am,
Okay.
which to me is a bigger issue, right?
I agree.
No matter what level we're at, our role is to take on the traditional women's roles in the workplace. But it was a aha moment for them. And we've got to just do those very simple. I mean, I wasn't doing a protest. I wasn't, saying, calling a meeting about why we have to move the food and you don't. We just didn't move the food. It was like, you move my cheese. We just didn't move the food. And it really, now to your point, Laura, they'll go back, and when they're in a meeting with other younger ladies, they will say, don't move that food. So let's start with just not moving the food movement, right? That's a start.
I love it. I love it. I've spent decades moving the food, so you've inspired me as well. Dana, what are your thoughts on some practical advice for your male colleagues as to how to be better allies?
How do I follow the move the food story? I don't, I shouldn't be last here. Well, I think with what everybody was saying, I think Patricia was saying, let them know, in that moment, what's going on. I think building meaningful relationships is a prerequisite to that in my mind. It allows your message to come off as a friend speaking rather than an angry colleague. Building the relationship is a prereq to everything, but invite them to lunch, talk about it. Again, going back to what I said earlier, let them know what you need. Let them know where your roadblocks are. They're probably not aware, the same way that my company wasn't aware that I was bringing in all this work. I was, my manager was, but it's, you know, maybe not everybody else can see it. Yeah, just tell them where you would like their support.
I would add to that, be very specific. You know, if you traditionally have not performed, you know, those responsibilities, if you as a man have never put together the bridal shower, I've done dozens. So help to convey, I need you to do this, and this is what I need for the catering, and you need to go to Party City and buy this, and then this, you know, and just be very specific. And it doesn't have to be something as simple as, you know, a social event, although I think that traditionally we take care of those. But if you want something from your male colleagues and you feel like they are, they're supportive, but they're just not carrying the ball, be specific about what you are looking for. And I think it was Cindy who said earlier, echoing the voices of women. So you can say to a man, I'm going to present this idea at this meeting, and then I would like you to follow it up with why that's a great idea, and they will do it. But being specific really helps in terms of giving someone some guidance, because like we've all said, almost everyone has good intentions. They just, you know, we do what we're trained to do and what we've always done until someone shows us a better way.
You're gonna have to drop off early, everyone. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Laura.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
And we are out of time. We've got only about 90 seconds left. So Ashley, I wonder if you want to close us out. And before I go, thank you so much. I had so much fun with you ladies. This is really great information. I hope that it helped, you know, give some insights to our audience. And I hope we can do this again. So Ashley, I'll give you the last word here.
You guys, that was amazing. For some reason, my camera was having issues, but I got to hear the whole thing. Thank goodness. And you guys did an amazing job. Thank you for sharing your time and educating us all on this. And I think Sharon had a really great point that especially women that are more vintage, is what Babby Jaco tells me, more vintage than us. They've been trained and it was not okay to say and stand up. And so I think it is a cool area where we teach upwards as well, down and up. So more power to you guys for all you're doing out there. Thank you much for sharing these stories. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to send them in to us at admin@one, and we'll get in touch with these expert ladies and get the results right back out to you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Our audience, have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye. Bye.